Well, it's wonderful to be here in Warsaw, and I would like to suggest to you that it's time to start designing with our ears. If you think about design, most of the time you probably think about these. The rooms we occupy are very carefully thought about in terms of the way they look. In this room, everything you see was designed by somebody. The way the room sounds, not so much. These sounds weren't designed, they're the byproduct of things happening. And that's very largely how we experience sound in the modern world. We stand on street corners shouting over noise like this and pretending that it doesn't exist. It does, and as a result, we get into the habit of suppressing our consciousness of sound, suppressing it. In fact, most of us have a relationship with sound which is a little bit like this. However, sound affects us in 4 powerful ways, and I would like to share those 4 ways with you now so you understand the importance of designing the sound around us as much as the way things look. Here's the first way in which sound affects all of us. Now, that was quite gentle. I could be much more ferocious than that. If your alarm clock at home sounds anything like that, I do suggest you change it. It's not good for you to wake up to a sudden sound like that. Hearing is your primary warning sense, and any sudden sound will be interpreted by your very old brain before you get to interpret it in your cortex. It will be felt as a warning, as an alarm. And the result is, it changes your heart rate, your hormone secretions, you'll get cortisol, noradrenaline from sounds like that. Happens to us all the time. Sound can even change your brain waves. Let me calm you down again. This is surf, a very gentle sound, this one. It's an excellent sound to use if you have trouble sleeping. Very similar to the breathing of a sleeping human being, and also a sound we associate with being relaxed, not a care in the world. I won't leave it on too long right now because it's very effective. The second way sound affects us is psychologically. It changes the way we feel. So this piece of music is not going to make you feel happy. It was designed to be a sad piece of music, and it's very effective at doing that. With my company, the sound agency, we deploy sound in spaces knowing the effect, and often we will use birdsong, which also changes our feelings. Birdsong makes most people feel secure, because we've learned over hundreds of thousands of years that when the birds are singing, we're safe, things are okay. It's a very good sound to work to, by the way, because it's also nature's alarm clock. You know that when the birds are singing, it's time to be awake, and at the same time, you feel reassured and comfortable. A very good sound for work. The third way sound affects us is cognitive. You can't understand 2 people talking at the same time, or in this case, 1 person talking twice. It's not possible, is it? You have bandwidth for around 1.6 human conversations. Nobody can understand 2, which means if you happen to be working in an office that sounds like this, you're going to struggle. The effect of this kind of soundscape, especially if you can hear one conversation from somebody else, is devastating. Now, as you'll find out from Tim in a moment, that is a big oversimplification. Not all open plan, not all productivity. Nevertheless, there is a lot of data to show that trying to work in an open plan office is difficult. I'll come back to that in a moment. The fourth way sound affects you is behaviorally. So ask yourself, is this person going to drive at a steady 40 kilometers an hour? I think perhaps not. This kind of sound changes our behavior enormously. At the simplest, we will move away from unpleasant sound if we can. So if I were to put this sound on, and leave it for the next 15 or 20 minutes, I don't think you would be sitting here. You would leave the room. Of course you would. So sound affects our behavior enormously. Now, there's a fantastic study I'd like to share with you which shows how much sound is affecting your behavior even when you don't know. This was done by some academics in the UK. It was done in a supermarket. There were two gondola ends, two displays in the supermarket of wine, one with French wine and one with German wine. They were absolutely identical, no difference between them. All they did was to alternate a music condition. On day one, a little bit of this, and on day two, a little bit of that. That always makes people laugh, that piece of music. I don't know. Maybe it's a funny piece. So what happened? On the French music days, French wine outsold German wine by 5 bottles to 1. This clicker is misbehaving a little bit. 5 bottles to 1. That may not be surprising because it does sell more on the world market. However, on the German music days, German wine outsold French wine by 2 bottles to 1. Now that is a huge shift in behavior. And this is not conscious. This is not you or me going into a supermarket going, German music, therefore I should buy German wine. It doesn't work like this. It's completely unconscious response to the sound around us. That's how much sound is affecting your behavior. For retailers, this is a serious issue. It would obviously be stupid to have a shop with a terrible smell in it, but how many shops do you go into with terrible sound in them? The result? We leave, or we leave sooner than we would, and the effect on sales is devastating. Now, sound is not just restricted to retail, of course. I'm going to look at some environments and the effects of noise around us to prove to you it's so important that we design with our ears as well. For example, this evening you might go out for a drink with somebody in a place that looks like this and sounds like this. You spend your evening shouting across the table. Where are the soft surfaces in that room? Everything hard, everything reflective. Or tomorrow I'll be getting on one of these and listening to something like this. Unintelligible words delivered through an old-fashioned telephone handset through probably a $5 loudspeaker. This is a £50 million plane. Why can't we afford a good sound system? I don't understand. This kind of thing drives us crazy. It really does. It has a huge effect on 3 really important things. Oh, thank you. Let's try the other one. On 3 really important things. They are extremely important things, and they are all impacted by the sound around you. Happiness, effectiveness, and well-being. Your happiness, your effectiveness, and your well-being. Now, at a social level, this is a major issue. In Europe, sound is having a serious issue, a serious effect on health for millions and millions of people. This one, I'm afraid, is even worse than the other one. Nope. But eventually, you'll have to bear with me. Now, 2% of Europe's population having their sleep destroyed night after night may not sound like a lot until you realize that is actually 8 million people. 8 million people who can't sleep. Maybe you're one of them. Night after night, traffic noise keeping you awake. There's a huge cost to that, tens of billions of euros. Let's have a look. I didn't even do that. Let's have a look at a few environments which really matter to us. A few environments which we care about. This one, to start with. When I see a schoolroom that looks like this, I'm forced to ask myself this question. Interesting. That's not what I'm seeing in front of me. Can we catch up, guys? Get them in sync? Thank you. So, when I see a schoolroom that looks like this, I'm forced to ask myself this question. Now, there are probably many architects in the audience. I didn't press anything. This is very interesting. Let me just go back to the schoolroom. Right. Now, I know you do have ears, those of you who are architects. However, let's face it, you spend most of your training on the eyes, don't you? I think in America, architects train for 5 years, and on average, they might spend a day, at most a week, on acoustics and auditory issues. So we end up with rooms like this where the reverberation time is very, very long, and it creates noise. In German schoolrooms, this is the average noise level at the moment, 65 decibels. I would have to shout reasonably loud over 65 decibels. It doesn't damage your ears, but it does damage your health, because the research shows that 65 decibels is the level at which, over continued exposure, you increase your risk of heart attack. It may well be that teachers are shortening their lives by working in this environment day after day. Let's have a look at another environment that's quite important. You go to hospital, everything's great and helping you to get well. This kind of sound? I don't think so. These are alarm sounds. They're intended to be alarming. Unfortunately, in most hospitals, there's a thing called alarm fatigue, and the staff cease to pay attention to these sounds because they hear them all the time. The people they affect, that's you and me. Hard to sleep. With that kind of alarm sound going on, it affects the quality and quantity of your sleep, and sleep is how we get well. So no surprise that in American hospitals, the number one complaint is noise. Not food, not care, not service, noise. Let's have a look at another environment, which is one that I think we all experience on a daily basis, the office. Now, if we go back, the modern office started with the work of Taylor back in the early part of the 20th century, who applied the principles of manufacturing to office work. Everybody in rows of identical desks doing the same thing, like cogs in a machine. Well, we wouldn't do that today, would we? Oh, yes, we do. We do exactly the same thing today. Call it neo-Taylorism, if you like. This ramming of people into identical workstations with noise around them is a serious issue. It's really designed to save cost, and it conflates cost saving with productivity. They're not the same thing, and if you put those two together, what do you get? Misery for millions of people who are having their lives blighted by doing this. There's plenty of scientific evidence saying this isn't a good thing to do, rigidly putting people into these little boxes. Here's some more of it. There's plenty of it. I should give you the scientific evidence for doing this as well. To be fair, that's all of it. There is none. Nobody thinks this is a good idea. So it's not surprising that noise is the number one complaint in modern offices. Of course it is. From the Leesman survey, which you'll be hearing a lot more about in a moment when Tim takes the stage, noise is one of the most serious issues facing people. The Leesman Index asks people, how important is this thing to you? Noise levels in the office, quiet space to work in. As you can see, very important to people. That was back in 2013, and the most recent results, equally important to people. These are significant issues. But the other question Leesman asks is, how satisfied are you with this thing? Not very. Look at the ratio between those two things. Very important, very unhappy. The vast majority of people in offices are unhappy about noise levels. Still, we've seen a small improvement over the last, 6 years. Not a very big one. We need to work harder. And they're also unhappy about the provision of quiet working space, a place where they can go and think. I'm not surprised, because we are designing offices that look like this. Now, maybe you have been in one of these. Maybe you've designed one of these. Where are the soft surfaces in here? You would actually probably have to tell staff what shoes they can wear in this kind of a space, because everything will reverberate. Here's another example of a very interesting meeting room. I'm not sure how effective those chairs by the screen are for video conferencing. The acoustics in that room will be awful. And how anybody thinks that this little thing in the middle is going to work, I don't know. Now, this is an advertising agency I went to in London. I took this picture, and it's supposed to be where you chill out. Now, I like Metallica as much as the next guy, but perhaps not while I'm trying to have a quiet sandwich at lunchtime. No wonder she looks like this. That's not a place to chill out. They have the TV on at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't impose that kind of environment on people. What it's about is designing not just appearance, but experience in all the senses. And the way you do that is to focus on 4 things. The base level is acoustics. Get an acoustician in at the beginning of a project, not right at the end. And think about noise, machinery in the space, the noise of people. How do you control that? Perhaps, again, with acoustic treatments, perhaps by thinking about designing a space according to the noise output of the people in it. Then we have a sound system. If you're going to put sound into a space like this, have a good system, which we have here. True also in offices. And finally, if you're going to put sound in, what sound is it? Is it appropriate? Is it supportive? What kind of content? We need actually different types of office space for different types of working. So this is an adaptation of the work by Professor Jeremy Meyerson, who distinguished 3 kinds, and I would add a 4th. Collaboration, open plan is fine. Concentration requires a different kind of workspace, a space where shh is the rule and it's quiet working, we don't talk. Contemplation may need a Zen-type space or a social space where you can unwind after a really serious meeting. And finally, I would say for communication, we may need to design space as well. I've been in open plan offices where the turning of a piece of paper is a major event. If you take a phone call in there, you're putting everybody off because there's no privacy at all. Offices can be too quiet or too loud. Too quiet, you have the privacy issue, where me talking puts all of you off if it's dead quiet in here. Too loud, we have a health issue. 65 decibels is not healthy to work in. So somewhere in the middle, we have a sweet spot, around 45 to 55 decibels of pleasant background sound that's not disturbing or off-putting, like other people's conversation, or alarm sounds like phone ringing. Those are very distracting sounds. If you're too quiet, you may need to put something in. If you're too loud, you probably need to take something out. Now, just a word on something called biophilia. I'm sure you've all come across this. Last time I was in Warsaw, actually, I was speaking for the Polish Green Buildings Council. LEED, BREEAM, Green Buildings Councils, there's a big push towards more healthy environments that actually enhance well-being, maybe bringing the outside inside, which is biophilia. Maybe you could have pictures up. Why not have biophilic sound as well? And actually, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce something the first time in the world, which is at my company, the Sound Agency, we're about to start producing biophilic sound. We call them moodscapes. They're designed for offices to enhance well-being and productivity and improve privacy as well. Different moods like focus or energize, sound that comes out from lots of loudspeakers. It's generative, which is to say that it is not recorded, it actually is produced in real time. It's biophilic, and it's also elective, which means people can choose what they're going to be listening to. Very important not to impose sound on people without giving them a choice. So elective, and it's also responsive. It will change according to the building conditions, which means it can become part of an intelligent building. So that's MoodSonic. We're very excited that's coming out soon. Now, I know this works because we do it in environments like airports. This is Glasgow Airport, where we put this soundscape in. Now you are sound experts, you can assess this is a gentle soundscape, very slow-paced. It's going to slow people down. A bit of birdsong makes people feel comfortable and reassured. The effect of putting this soundscape in, although the target was reducing stress, what happened is that sales in the shops went up by 10%. I'll give you one more example from the city of Lancaster in California, where we put this soundscape down the main street called the Boulevard in lots of weatherproof loudspeakers. The shopkeepers loved it, and the sheriff reported that after we put this soundscape in, crime fell by 15% in that area of the town. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to emphasize to you that designing for the ears is not an option, it's essential. Because whatever business you're in, if you create happiness, effectiveness, and well-being with your designs or with your environments, what you're getting is an understanding that good sound is good business. Thank you very much indeed for lending me your ears today. Thank you.